Hey, brother! Oh my gosh, is it June yet, Ben? I am so excited for the next installment of The Incredibles, and I just keep being torn between these two different ideals. On the one hand, we talk about Pixar movies for a living, so I feel like I should be doing everything I can to find out as much as I can about The Incredibles 2. But on the other hand, The Incredibles is one of my favorite movies ever, so I'm trying to keep it at least somewhat spoiler-free. So, my solution has been to just rewatch the original movie another 100 times and see if there's anything I missed the first 100 times. And the answer was yes. I think we have stumbled on to something big. Syndrome is hands down one of the best, if not the best, Pixar villain of all time. Full video by clicking the card. His plan is just so elegant. Use the supers to build up the power of his machine, killing them off in the process so that in the end there is no one left to challenge him. But after all these years, I think I have come to a new conclusion, and that is that Syndrome was not working alone. And no, I do not mean Mirage. I instead mean Rick Dicker and the American government. And in case you have forgotten, this is Rick Dicker. So let's review. At the beginning of The Incredibles, everything is going great. The supers are well loved and are doling out vigilante justice however they see fit, until Mr. Incredible saves the wrong guy and gets sued. This costs the government millions in lawsuits and cover-ups and cleanups, and in the end they decide that the supers must go, and so they introduce the Superhero Relocation Act. This helps relocate them so that they can assimilate back into the general population and continue to live their lives normally and anonymously. But then fast forward to the present and we can see the present day leader of the super relocation program, Rick Dicker, escorting Bob out of his current place of employment, just complaining up a storm about how much work this is gonna cost him.
We can't keep doing this, Bob. We appreciate what you did in the old days, but those days are over. From now on, you're on your own.
Sorry, what was that, Rick? They're on their own? This moment right here gives us almost all of the information we need to know. You're on your own? Is that a joke, Rick? What do you mean you're on your own? Are you abandoning them? Are you even allowed to do that? Like, what are you complaining about? Isn't this exactly your job, to relocate supers after situations exactly like this? It is seriously super confusing. He even follows it up with I guess I could relocate you one more time, for old time's sake. Bob, of course, declined, saying he couldn't do that to Helen and the kids again, but hold on. Let's back up a second. Are you, Rick, asking Bob if he wants to be relocated? Is that up to Bob? Like, seriously, help me out here, Rick. Like, is it not precisely your job to make that decision for him whether or not he wants to be relocated in situations like this? Like, it shouldn't be up to Bob. He did break the rules. He revealed himself. Why are you asking him if he wants to be relocated? If it was up to Bob, they wouldn't even be in hiding in the first place. And it's not like Rick is quitting his job altogether. He's not just like fed up with his entire career and this is the final straw. Because we see him later in the movie. He's not quitting his job here. He's just abandoning the Parr family, which again, I don't understand. What does that mean? Like, are you not gonna do your job and cover up this incident? Like, maybe you don't want to go through the process of relocating them, but the government at large is still going to want this covered up, right? They're still gonna have to cover all the damages, yes? Because I'm pretty sure, and I'm just going out on a limb here, but I am betting that this guy has insurance for these sort of things because, you know, he's the boss of an insurance company and likes scamming people out of money. Either way, you'd think this would actually come as great news to Bob though, right? Like, hey, no more government supervision, yay! Interestingly, even though he doesn't quite see it that way in the moment, he does get welcome news later that night from Mirage. Yeah, literally the day Rick quits on him, he gets discovered by Mirage.
Coincidence? I think not!
And before we go on, let me go ahead and point out one more thing, that in this moment when he's walking out on the Parr family, why doesn't he warn Bob that supers have been going missing? Because at this point, Operation Kronos would have killed 15 15 other supers. You don't think that's worth mentioning to any other living super? Like, oh, hey, Bob, point of interest. I know you don't want to be relocated, but like 15 of your other colleagues who we are supposed to be hiding have gone missing. Sure, maybe Rick didn't work directly with every single super. Maybe he wasn't the handler for all of them, but he's the head of the department. How is he missing this? You'd think he'd notice when 15 supers go missing. And it's not like they've gone missing in secret. You literally see Bob reading the paper about how Gazerbeam has gone missing, or at least his secret identity has gone missing. And at the very least, we definitely know that Rick definitely knows Gazerbeam because we see him here at the Parr's wedding together. So, was Rick working with Syndrome though? Are there any direct ties between the two other than Rick just being really bad at his job and not helpful in any way? Well, as I mentioned earlier, literally the same day that he abandons Bob, Mirage finds him that night. And true, she was actually looking for a Frozone that night, but I don't know, it still feels really coincidental. The thing about the way Mirage recruits people is she needs to catch them in the act of using their powers first and then approach them after. Which is indeed exactly what I'm suggesting, but also that they were very crafty about it. Because whoever gave them the tip-off about Lucius knew that he would be doing hero work, and we know that he only ever does it with Bob. So if you tip someone off about Frozone, you are in essence also tipping them off about Mr. Incredible. We also know that Syndrome got rich by selling his inventions to various governments. Now, we don't know exactly which governments those were, but we do see one Rick Dicker using some awfully fictional looking memory erasing technology when he interviews Kari in Jack Jack Attack. And speaking of Jack Jack Attack, this adorable little short adds a whole new layer to Dicker's deviancy. If you're not familiar with it, it's pretty hilarious. It basically just shows you what was happening back at the house while the rest of the family was off fighting Syndrome. It follows the adventure of Kari the babysitter and her attempt to helplessly control the ever-growing list of Jack Jack's new powers. And when the short ends, you see that she's actually been telling the whole story to none other than Rick. Now, this had never really seemed that odd to me, maybe even standard procedure for someone like Rick, until the new trailers for The Incredible 2 started to drop, and Bob says this.
You have powers! Yeah, baby!
That moment right there, that is Bob discovering that his child has powers. That's when he discovers it for the first time. Which, agreed, exciting moment for him, but what I find unsettling about it is that frickin' Rick Dicker already knew that Jack Jack had powers and didn't tell the Parrs. Now, I don't know how long it's supposed to have been between this moment and this one, but I'm betting that Rick Dicker, if he's any good at his job, and I'm not sure that he is, didn't waste much time in getting to Kari, and that Bob doesn't find out about Jack Jack's powers until after Helen is back in action. So yeah, Rick, I'm on to you. I know that you're withholding information about that kid's powers from his parents. Also, can I just point out something I noticed earlier while I was tweeting about how Kari had better be in The Incredibles 2 or I would riot? Which, by the way, if Kari's not in The Incredibles 2, I'm gonna riot. Look at these two shots. Look at how Dicker and Syndrome are framed in them. It's the exact same, and this is intentional because they both treat Kari the exact same because they're on the same side. Now, I will say this in Dicker's defense. If he was working with Syndrome, I don't think he knew the full scope of his plan to attack the city and then proclaim himself a super. If he was in cahoots with him, I think it was just about getting rid of the supers, which is still pretty bad. We've made a video before discussing how the government themselves may have been responsible for the creation of the supers, full video by clicking the card, and we also know that a big part of the reason the supers had to go into hiding in the first place was because of how much money it was costing the government. But when you hear Rick describe it to Bob after he gets in trouble, it sounds like it's still costing them a ton of money just to keep everything covered up.
Money, 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 money.
So I can see why maybe they just want to start to eliminate the problem altogether and work with someone who can do it discreetly. I also think that maybe Rick actually does have a soft spot for the Parr family just because Helen and Bob are married and do have kids. That would explain the one final offer to relocate them. It would also explain why Elastigirl's location is unknown to Syndrome and why he would tip him off about Frozone and not Mr. Incredible himself. That way, maybe just Bob who is clearly the problem, gets caught and not his innocent wife and kids. And if you are still not convinced, there are 3 more tiny details I'd like to point out that connect these two. First, when Helen is approaching Syndrome's island, he immediately recognizes it as a government plane, almost as if he has done business with them and had them land there before. 2, after they defeat the Omnidroid, Dicker tells the Incredibles that they have frozen Syndrome's assets, to which I say, how? You don't even have him in custody yet. He's still at large. How do you know who he is or what accounts to freeze or even have access to his accounts? Because somehow I doubt the guy who owns his own uncharted island has a bank account that you have access to. Unless, I don't know, maybe you've had to wire money to it before. And finally, how does Syndrome have their address to go kidnap Jack-Jack? Or even know about Jack-Jack for that matter? I'd say maybe they just followed Bob home at one point, but that almost can't be it, because again, they don't know where Elastigirl is, and Syndrome doesn't even know that the two are married or have kids.
You married Elastigirl? And got busy!
So yeah, somebody tipped him off about the address and the third kid. And there you go. Basically everything Rick does fails to make sense. Yes, at the end of the movie, he does seem happy that they're back in action, but again, that's his role, to appear to be on their side. In any case, he will be back in action in Incredibles 2, so we'll just have to keep an eye out. Because as I said earlier, he already knows all of Jack-Jack's powers, and I can't help but notice that so much of the marketing for this movie seems to be revolving around Jack-Jack. He's certainly going to have a big role in this movie and could even be the target of the villain, but he definitely can't be unless they already know his powers. Ben, my question for you and everyone else is, what do you think? Was Syndrome working with Rick Dicker to help get rid of the supers and save the government some money? Let me know your thoughts in the towel section down below. These socks are amazing! And a special thanks to these patrons who support Super Carlin Brothers on Patreon. Guys, thanks for watching. As always, please remember to like the video if you haven't already, and subscribe so you don't miss any future Incredibles action from us. If you wanted to see what Kronos means, you can check out this video right here. Or if you want to see why Syndrome is the best Pixar villain ever, you can check out this video right here. But Ben, that's all I've got for you today, man. I will see you in another life, brother.